Hi. First of all, thank you, Kellyanne, for your leadership to find solutions. It's really awesome to have you in that role. So one of the things that we're doing in North Dakota is we're asking our citizens to unite in a grassroots movement to start talking about the disease of addiction so we can eliminate the shame and stigma. As someone who's been in recovery for 15 years now, long-term recovery, I know firsthand the devastation the disease of addiction can cause. And my disease prevented me, the shame and stigma prevented me from reaching out for help and finding recovery. So I just would like to say that we concur with you on eliminating the shame and stigma around the disease of addiction is super important for this whole process. Wondering if you have any specifics that you might be planning as part of the administration around that specifically.
We are, and thank you so much, Kathryn. We really appreciate you being here and always being willing to share your story and to help others similarly situated. First of all, there are already existing materials, federal ones, state-based ones, communities certainly have done a pretty good job place to place in the telltale signs if you think you're a coworker or you're a family member or behavioral changes. And sometimes people just say they're tired or they're just having a bad day of it or they overate or they're having they're breaking up a relationship. We hear all these different excuses for why somebody seems like they're in a different mood or a different mindset or not fully present. And because you don't think of your coworker, your neighbor, your family member, your child as somebody, again, in the back alley with a needle coming out of their veins, that is not who is getting hooked. It is, in other words, you can do it in the privacy of your home, and that's where it's happening. People are ingesting pills on college campuses. They're buying them for $5. You have some people who they read every single label about what they put in their body and has to have one ingredient or two ingredients, can't have this, can't have that, and then they buy a pill for $5 and it's laced with fentanyl and that's it. So I think it is awareness because people don't believe it can happen to them and they don't believe that they do any risk behaviors. There are no comorbidities for some folks. There are no other risky behaviors. Any other, quote, risk behaviors legal. Tobacco, in some states, marijuana, drinking, they're all legal. So it's not, I'm a reasonable person. I'm only doing it in moderation. But it is the pills that start out as the gateway to heroin use, as a gateway to then accidental fentanyl overdoses. So I think it's willing to have the conversation even where you think the conversation is not relevant, because chances are it is relevant somewhere where you're not putting it all together. And I think we have to start young. The First Lady has made this very clear in her remarks. We have to educate our youth. And there's a school of thought that thinks you do that through the shock the conscience type ads that we've seen in other industries. There are the warm the heart stories of treatment and recovery, and you don't need to do that to be cool or to feel awake or to feel better about something. That really getting people in touch with treating the whole patient, I think, is also the whole person is what Administrator Verma was saying. But I think these share the stories will also be great because the best way to tell people that you don't need to feel shame or stigma is to give them a forum through which other people go first. And in that regard, I think it was very powerful that the president went first. It told his family's story. Everyone's got one. When I met Linda, I met her as a drug court judge, and then she came forward and told the story of her daughter who had everything going for her. And I don't mind saying that because you just said you're a mom and you started this whole network that's now national. That allows other people to come forward and say that. But I do think it starts peer-to-peer. We found that more than anything, it has to start peer-to-peer. That's who people want to hear from. They want to hear from people who they say, I like you and you're like me. We share a common experience. But it's youth. But you also see these fatality rates, 35 to 54-year-olds too. They've increased over the years. So I don't want anybody to think we're only talking about teenagers in high school. This is everyone. A lot of seniors, the senior population, it's increasing. And so it is everyone and everywhere, and I think to that extent it should make people feel that they're not alone, but they're also not unusual in their circumstances.
No, I think you said it well.